Okay. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the September meeting of the Colorado Hydrogen Network. As you all can tell, we are doing this a week late because last week I was in Houston for the Drilling for Hydrogen conference, and we're going to talk about that. But the first thing I want to do, though, is go through. There's quite a bit of new events coming up. I want to talk about these. Um, this is the second annual Hydrogen Mountain Retreat. You can see up at the top it says 2025, and these are the 2024 invitees. I'm not sure who's going to be at that yet. This is by invitation only, and I've been lucky to score an invitation to that the second year in a row. SARAD would like me to uh, do some podcast recording. Last year, I recorded four different folks there, but this is really intended for certain people that either are part of the SARAD consortium, hydrogen consortium, and then there's a few other people that they invite that they think will add something to the conference. But sorry to tempt you with this and tell you you can't go. But anyway, just want you to know that this is going on. It's kind of great. We've got such a really prestigious event that goes on right here in our area, put on by SARAD Enterprise Partners, who's up in Boulder. All right. The other things coming up, I've talked about these two before. This one's a little bit far away in Hamburg, but if you fancy a trip to Germany, you might want to take that one in. That's in October. And then our friends down in Texas at Flying High, which is a aviation hydrogen organization, a nonprofit, are having an event that's virtual, so we can all attend. I think there's a small charge for that, but you can check that out at highsky.org. It's a few hours, but it should be an interesting event. They've really been getting a lot of traction with hydrogen for aviation, so it'll be real nice to see that happen. This next one, Colorado Rural Electric Association, I just heard about today. They've asked me to moderate a panel discussion, and that's coming up November 3rd. They have this every year. I was at this 2 years ago. I wasn't at the last year's event, but this is up in Westminster. If you're interested, go to the CREA Co-op website and take a look at that, see if that interests you and if you want to join that. Then another event that I've been invited to moderate a panel discussion at is ClimateCon. And that's actually next year, coming up February 2nd. But that's in Denver. I don't think that one's too expensive. It's not strictly about hydrogen, it's about the climate, really, but of interest to all of us. So I think you may want to check that out at climatecon.world. And then this one I did talk about last time, RE Plus Charge H2, going to be in Seattle. Again, a little bit far to travel, but this is coming up November 19th and 20th. And you can see the address here to if you want to check out the costs and register. I know the early bird rate is good till October 3rd, so that's coming up if you want to check that out. But this is really to talk about hydrogen hubs, and I know a lot of them have been kind of shut down either intentionally or just kind of by default. But they are going to talk about a lot of things that I think would be of interest to a lot of us. Building a global hydrogen economy, the hubs, some status on things there. Talk about sustainable fuels for maritime and aviation, which is a couple of areas that are pretty hard to decarbonize. And then, of course, workforce, which is another one that's a little bit tough to tackle. It's, students don't want to study things about hydrogen until the infrastructure's in place, but we need people really coming up kind of at the same time. So there's some work that has to be done there. And then microgrids, data centers, Bitcoin, and AI-powered energy systems. So sounds interesting. I'm not sure I can afford to do that, especially since I just went down to Houston on my own nickel. But maybe some of you are interested or have maybe ulterior motives to go to Seattle. So check that one out. All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is that Brendan Donor has, out of his own pocket, bought a hydrogen fuel cell Mirai and a fueling station for that, or a fueler, from our friends Electric Green up in Lyons. And he's just about ready to get this going. I know he's got the fueler, but he's waiting to get the electricity hooked up. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today to talk about this, but I wanted to go ahead and roll this out. And his idea or his concept is that he's going to rent this car through a company called Turo, which the way he describes it, it's like an Airbnb, but for cars. And I know if you go on the Turo site, you can rent exotic cars or maybe cars that are a little bit different, and you're actually renting them from directly from the owner. So his business model is that he's going to keep this car at the Marriott, which is right there by NREL, and that'll be the pickup and drop off location. He's going to provide the hydrogen, so you don't have to worry about fueling it. Obviously, you can't drive it too far and run out. But I definitely intend to rent this from him. I'll just drive my car there, leave it overnight, take his Mirai, and just try it out. I have driven the Mirai. Was lucky enough to drive NREL's Mirai one time when we took it to the Denver Auto Show. But it would be nice to try it under some different conditions and so forth. And also, I want to throw some business Brendan's way. I mean, he spent a lot of money out of his own pocket to buy this Mirai in California and bring it out and buy the fueler and things. So we'll watch for that. Like I say, he's waiting to get connected on his electrical. He's not really sure how long that's going to take. He's got to have a 240-volt line put in for that. But he's planning to rent that later next year. So that is all I had to say about that, but I do want to move on and talk about the electric green mobile hydrogen fueler, which some of you might have seen at the last Hydrogen Day that we had last October. And I see Jane is on, so that's good. Jane, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to stop sharing.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Let's see if I can figure out how to share here.
Yeah, don't you love online meetings?
Oh, yes, yes. Well, oh, okay. Um,
Jane, I was just looking. Is Chris on too, or are you covering it?
I'm covering it. I don't
All
think
right.
Chris is on. Oh,
Okay.
am I sharing? Yeah.
It's coming through here. Well, we don't see it yet, but it says it started. There it
Okay.
is. Okay, we got it. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So obviously, hello to all of you. Many of you already know me. If you don't, I'm Jane Allo, CEO and co-founder of Electric Green. And I'm just going to breeze through a couple of slides to show what we've been up to lately and where we are with our business in general. So let's see here. My controls are not working. Okay, here we go. I think that'll work. Yeah. So, as many of you know, but we have made further progress. We had a patent. Now we have several patented features of our H2Go Firefly. And in case you don't know, it's a dual purpose energy storage and fuel production system that, in essence, can provide electricity for days to weeks and produce green hydrogen fuel on demand. We're focusing currently on two market verticals initially, smart hydrogen home systems and micro hydrogen fueling stations. And that is basically encompassing home energy and fueling, as well as mobile hydrogen fueling and small containerized fueling with several markets following, namely commercial hydrogen fuel supply and drone hydrogen fueling, as well as long duration energy electrical supply systems for, like, as example, storage, computing storage, AI, Bitcoin, etc. All of our solutions are scalable and produce the hydrogen on site, providing hydrogen storage at low pressures and including redundancy for resiliency. And with our patented management system, they all have AI capabilities. So
depending on the need, if it's refueling or electrification or both, we have the solution. Through partnerships with home community builders, we will distribute the.
You're muted.
Whoops.
I'm
I, you know,
One of you needs to be muted, but Jane's will probably be on if she's talking.
Yeah, I apologize. I
Sorry.
might have done that by mistake. We were getting some echo, and I was trying to mute some folks that were unmuted, and I may have hit Jane by mistake. I apologize.
Oh boy. Well, I don't know where I dropped off, but I'll just start at the beginning with this slide. So, through partnerships with home community builders, we will disrupt the current energy model with smart, clean hydrogen living. And people will be able to use their own produced stored energy to power their home and car with the electric green H2Go Firefly. So our H2Go Firefly, as you probably already know, does and will create green or clean hydrogen, also from the grid, but it takes that electricity and converts it to storage and on-demand hydrogen home fueling for the homeowner's hydrogen vehicle. So to dig into our current hydrogen fueling concept, we have several different designs designed. They're designed with an eye towards an entry point of affordability, scalability, and dependability, all starting with the same system, all small, but then can scale up to as large as the need may be. But as I mentioned, our main focus is that eye towards that entry point, which is going to include the, lower cost, easy to scale up, and always being dependable. So they all produce hydrogen on site and are uniquely modular for direct hydrogen fueling. And of course, I know I mentioned this previously, but for those of you who have not seen this, our stations will support both 350 bar and 700 bar, and they store at very low PSI at 500 PSI. So we don't have high pressures present until the time of actual fueling. So just to go over some of the pictures here, we have, kind of the at-home fueling, the mobile fueling, a drone trailer illustration. So we are also getting into refueling for drones. And then we have the smaller all-in-one container fueling station that we're really emphasizing right now and are rolling out. Probably our first installation is looking like it's going to be third quarter of 2026. And this is a illustration of that container that we'll be rolling out. And then after that, we should be rolling out another 3 shortly thereafter. And from following that, we're looking at another 6 to 8. So we have a rather robust roadmap. We're currently securing additional funding, working on partnerships, and reaching product installation milestones over the next number of years here. We're in several partnership development conversations with prominent companies with hydrogen fueling interest, as well as discussions with home building companies. And we have recently completed building 3 of our hydrogen mobile refuelers. One of those will be used in Chile for hydrogen forklifts. One will be a feature at the Future Technology SEMA show this November, and that's very exciting. We hope to get a lot of press on that, and soon actually there should be a press release with more details coming on that. And then the third one, as Brian mentioned, is for use with the Breathe Transport and their Toyota Mirai rental program. So that's all very exciting. And with that, I just want to thank everyone in the Colorado Hydrogen Network community. I mean, we really appreciate your continuous support, and we really thank you for listening and supporting us all along the way. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. We'll take a bunch of questions, but maybe to start things off, you had mentioned drones, and I had not thought about this till just now, but are you in contact with High Sky? You saw the mention there, Daniel McLean down there. If not, I could certainly do an introduction.
Yeah, we've known Danielle for quite some time. We've actually been to a conference of hers, or well, with her, and yeah, she's just a great lady. So really enjoy our relationship with her.
Okay, good. And Elliot's got his hand up, but let me ask you one more thing. You mentioned the SEMA show. Why don't I get that on the CHN calendar? Maybe could you just think to send me an email with the particulars of that? And is that coming up real soon, or have we got a little time to announce it?
Yeah, we have time. It's the first weekend in November, so I
Okay.
think it's the 4th through the 7th or something like that.
And where is it?
It's in Las Vegas.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking for an excuse to go to Vegas. All right. I want to
Well,
go see that.
I think that you can get a ticket for the last day on Friday. Otherwise, it's not really a open show to the
Oh,
public, which is kind of interesting.
oh.
It's yeah, it's kind of tight, but
Okay. I didn't realize that, but the Friday, the last day is a public day?
I believe so.
Okay. Well, I'll check that out. All right. Elliot, been making you wait long enough. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. Very nice presentation. It's amazing to watch you work. You've come a long way, and you're keeping at it. Your persistence is really awesome. I have one question, like on those mobile fuelers. If you, well, in producing them, how fast, if somebody could order them, how fast could you turn one around? Number one, and number two is, do you have like a listed price or something for it, or?
Yeah, Elliot, I'm happy to send information out if you'd like.
Okay.
Right now, and yeah, maybe you could just put in the chat your email address, and I
Yeah.
can send you some info.
Okay.
But yeah, things are a little bit interesting as far as turnaround time. As you can well imagine, I'm sure all of us are very much aware of the tariffs and situations around that, and we're currently working very hard at bringing our manufacturing to the US. And so we have experienced a little bit of delay. So hopefully,
I understand that for sure.
yeah,
But you're going forward, and that's the best. That's the most important thing. It's the keeping that traction moving forward is so challenging right now, and um, it's great to watch you continue. Thank
well,
you.
thank you, Elliot. I mean, we have really worked at modifying our business model to accommodate for the recent changes. So,
Right.
um,
Just one last thing. I think for us, we've had to make some adjustments and changes too, and we're in the process of remodeling what we're doing. But in the interim, if that's something that we can find available for us, it might be a great little, starter package for what we're trying to accomplish, at least for
absolutely.
introductory. So let's talk. And you've
Okay,
got my information, so I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Jane. Bye.
thank you, Elliot.
Jane, I thought of another question. I don't think you mentioned what is the production rate of the Firefly? Is that like a kilogram a day? And then how much storage has it got? I assume enough to fuel a car at least, right?
Yeah, so of course that's all a little bit variable. So for instance, dependent on so we are looking to work with more than just one electrolyzer company as well. And so we have several different technologies that we have access to that we can utilize.
Okay.
But for instance, if we were to utilize the inapter electrolyzers, we can put in multitudes of electrolyzers.
Hmm.
So the output of hydrogen is variable.
Okay.
So we do kind of have small, medium, large, if you will, and you can select what is going to be working for you. Same holds true with the tanks or the storage, I should say. That if you only need 8 tanks, so be it. But we can put in as many as, say, 30 in a trailer, in a mobile fueler. So I think, for instance, one of our current mobile fuelers that's going out right now has 6 kilograms available to it. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Fair enough.
And
So
it
you,
can produce 5 kilograms in a 24-hour period of time.
okay. All right. Yeah. So as you point
So,
out, you've got a various gamut of sizes.
Yes.
so I wanted to add just a little bit to that. So our trailers typically run 18 to 20 feet long. With that, you can run 5 to 10 kilograms a day, as high as 5 to 10 kilograms per day in our container unit. So we load in a stack of inapter electrolyzers in our larger containers. We have another manufacturer, and we can do 3 times that amount in a single cabinet. And so if you took a quick look at Jane's container pictures, with that, we can put 3 to 5 cabinets in a container. So if you're figuring 15 kilograms per cabinet, 5 of those cabinets, you're now at 75 kilograms a day on one of those, with storage of 30 tanks in that, and you can do 2 double compressors to give you 4 cars filling at 3-minute fills.
Wow.
4 or 5 kilograms. So we've been working on and that's all our patented design that Jane's talking about, to allow us to be able to do the fast fills in a smaller arena without having to have to depend upon foreign countries.
Well, I'm really impressed with what you guys have done. I mean, all of this hardware costs a lot of money, and you guys have made just a tremendous amount of progress. And let's hope these things start selling or flying off the shelf, as they say, and you get a lot of good sales soon. I think it's an impressive system.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And for those of you who don't know, Chris Allo is CTO of Electric Green. So he's much better at the technical aspects than I am.
All right. Well, I've been sort of hogging this here. Does anybody else have any questions? Don't be shy. We got plenty of time. Jane, I assume you've got some information on the website. If people just go to electricgreen.com, they'll find it.
Yeah, unfortunately, Brian, our website is a little outdated. That's kind of been the last thing for us to revamp.
I know the
But
feeling.
certainly anyone that has any questions is free to reach out to me at jane.allo. That's JANE.allo, ALLO, at electricgreen.com. And electric is spelled with K's.
Yeah, very good. Well, if more questions come up, we can always maybe jump back to those later. So thank you, Jane and Chris, and also congratulations on what you're doing. And it's great to hear you got some deliveries flying out there too. So glad to hear
Yeah,
that.
thank you. Thanks to everyone. We really do appreciate all the support we've gotten from each and every one of you. That's really helped us along the way.
All right. Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to move along to spend probably most of the rest of our time talking about this Drilling for Hydrogen event that I was just at a week ago, Monday, Tuesday, September 15th, 16th, down in Houston. And this consisted mainly of speakers and a panel discussion. And, last year in October, when we held our Hydrogen Day, I really had envisioned kind of a trade show type of thing, or an exhibit hall, because I was hoping to get a lot of the public, which didn't really happen. We did do some advertising on through Google, as well as it was very nice that Channel 7 did a spot for us. But it's interesting to think about. Maybe this is some format that we want to duplicate here in Colorado to have just speakers and panel discussions and make it more of a techie for insiders kind of a thing. But I'm going to consider doing that. But this particular event, I think this was the first year they had it. There were about 50 people there from about 40 organizations, and I'm going to talk about those organizations in a minute. But 7 of those were actual hydrogen prospectors. You know, a lot of us probably have heard of Coloma and Hytera, but there were quite a few others that I didn't know about, so it was good to be able to meet some of them. We had 6 folks that were there from internationally from out of the country, which was kind of nice. There was 5 organizations talking about geologic hydrogen stimulation, and that is where rather than just relying on Mother Nature to generate hydrogen underground, there's ways to stimulate that, and I'll talk about that in a minute. There were a couple of investment capital people there, so it was good to connect with them. Some universities, of course, as you'd expect. One legal guy who actually does some work here in Colorado, which was nice to see and hear him talk about some of the pitfalls to hydrogen and hydrogen prospecting and development, that because it's something new. And then, of course, one nonprofit, which was CHN. So here's the list of the attendees, and I've basically grouped these by the industry. And, you know, as you can imagine, there's, some folks selling drilling equipment and others in energy consulting. But there was a couple of companies that do analysis. Now, this company High Reveal, sorry, I better not click on that. That company now is our friend Vyacheslav Zagonik, who sunk the first hydrogen well in North America and who I've met several times. And I'll talk about him a little bit in a minute. He's moved over to this company that's basically doing analytics, helping these companies that are doing the prospecting and looking for hydrogen, basically interpret geologic data and other things. So it's more of a software approach, but anyway, that's definitely a very necessary and needed thing. As I mentioned, a bunch of companies doing hydrogen stimulation, actually creating the natural hydrogen underground and not just relying on Mother Nature to do it. GE Vernova was there. I was real excited because I thought they were going to talk about their 100% hydrogen turbine, but this was actually their group that does hydrogen sensors. But still interesting stuff. Here's one of the investors, green investors, and then here's the at the bottom of this table on the left are the exploration companies. So RMH2, Go Metals, H2AU, Halliburton. Drove past the big Halliburton facility there in Houston. I don't know if that's their headquarters. It might be. But of course, they're into an awful lot of things, just like a Honeywell or a Exxon or others are. Hytera was there. Coloma was not there. They were invited, but I think their rep couldn't make it. And then quantum hydrogen. And here's the other one that was very interesting to me was this TDK Ventures that is venture capital. And I met the gentleman and he was on a panel. That is something that I think is very interesting to all of us that are trying to enter this space. So a pretty good gamut of folks, a pretty good turnout, I would say, for their first year, if that was indeed their first year. So, as I said, the event really consisted of presentations and 2 panel discussions. I was on one of the panels talking about the role of hydrogen in the energy transition, and I really talked about cost price analysis and kind of drove a stake in the ground telling everybody that you really need to think down in the 30 cent a kilogram at the well range, because by the time you either truck that hydrogen somewhere or put it on a pipeline and take it somewhere, in order to compete with natural gas, gasoline, and diesel, it's probably got to be 30 cents at the source. So I'm sure that didn't make me real popular with everybody, but anyway, I kind of drew that line in the sand or put that stake in the ground. The Hytera presentation was real interesting, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. A lot of you are probably familiar with their so-called Nemaha project up in Kansas, and they actually have some things down in Nebraska too as well. Um, let's see some of the other highlights. There was a company here called Hiwatts, and they have a modular system that is basically storing energy using hydrogen. And it's got, of course, tanks on board, but it's got what they call a reversible fuel cell. So it can be an electrolyzer at one time and then a fuel cell at another time to create electricity. And they're looking to sell this to basically subdivisions as either a backup energy source, or even if they've got a solar array, it can be storage for that, and they can be their own islanded source, I guess you could call it. So that was real interesting to hear. Here's this legal thing I was talking about with William Garner. And so that's a name for all of us to keep in mind. Of course, as you'd expect any attorney to say, he said that anytime you start any of these projects, really get a legal eagle on board early, because there's just so many foibles. I know some of the states have absolutely no legislation or rules or whatever in place for hydrogen exploration. I know that was something that came up at the Rocky Mountain Association of Geologists meeting here in April, that folks up in Minnesota wanted to put a well down, and Minnesota's never had any oil or gas wells. And so the state threw up their hands and said, well, we don't know how to approve this or anything else. So you can run into things like that you don't expect. And I don't know if too many of us on the call are planning to do hydrogen exploration, but certainly by just kind of analogy, you can kind of think that there may be cases where you want some hydrogen legal help. Probably enough said here on these things. Oh, by the way, these presentation slides, they're going to send those to me. I was hoping to have them by this meeting today, but I don't have those yet. So if there's something you really want to bore into or whatever, let me know, and I'll make sure that I make those available. All right, so this is kind of an aside, but one of the slides that got thrown up during this presentation was this. It's called the Reimagined Colors of Hydrogen, and I just laugh because, and I'm going to show you in a minute what the colors really should be. And some of you have heard me talk about this before, but folks just keep making up colors, and nobody can keep them straight. And I don't know if anybody even agrees. Like nuclear, sometimes you can see it here. It says pink, but sometimes purple or red. And then for subsurface hydrogen, they've got orange and gold and white. And orange is the stimulated oxidation of iron. Gold is the in situ pyrolysis or microbial degradation of hydrocarbons. And then white is just naturally occurring hydrogen.
Noticed.
Bill, can you go? I don't have you up here. Can you go to mute?
Right.
Hang on a second. Okay, I nabbed him. All right, there we go. So let me go to the next slide. This is a soapbox I keep getting on and ranting about, but I'm probably losing the battle because I'm only one voice in the stadium. But initially, colors for hydrogen or any energy came from the need to specify two things with one idea. And those two things were, does it emit CO2 or not, or greenhouse gases? And is the source renewable or not? So we only needed four colors for that. Got four parameters, and it's a matrix here, and you can see how that works. So, but I don't think people understood what the colors meant. And so they started coming up with all these other ideas. But if you look at what these colors can cover, you can talk about any hydrogen. For example, green, that's natural hydrogen wells, or that could be splitting water. And unfortunately, we've kind of developed this tendency to just call anything that's electrolysis as green, but green really means it's made from renewable energy and it doesn't emit CO2. It could also mean biomass that does have carbon capture and sequestration. That could be green. And then blue, we're familiar with that color. That's basically from hydrocarbons because they're not renewable. With carbon capture. But what about hydrogen from plastic and tires? Because that really wasn't covered on their other chart. And hydrogen from petroleum wells, but if you leave the carbon in the ground, well, there's no CO2 emissions, so that's this column, but it's not renewable, so that's blue. So I think you get the idea here. And by the way, when you do it this way, you realize that hydrogen made from biomass without carbon capture really is over here, and there's no color for that. So I've just thrown out tan because it seemed like it was a color that was available. But as I say, I'm one lone voice. I think I've lost this battle, but I kind of have to laugh every time I hear about another color, and I can't remember what the colors are. But um, uh, you've got this chart. These slides, of course, will be on the website as well as the YouTube will be on, or I'm sorry, the recording of this will be on YouTube. So you can refer back to this, maybe make up your own cheat sheet. So when someone says they're making yellow hydrogen, you know what they're talking about. But um, anyway, my one of my pet peeves. All right, so let's talk for a minute about the mechanisms of naturally occurring hydrogen. Um, this first one is quite a mouthful, the serpentinization of mafic and ultramafic rocks. And basically what that is water can transform these two rock types of olivine and pyroxene into some different kinds of serpentine materials and magnetite. And as it turns out, it produces hydrogen gas in the process, as well as some other organic compounds. So, um, as I said, that's quite a mouthful, but basically that's one of the mechanisms that it creates hydrogen underground. The other is radiolysis. So basically, this is ionizing radiation from things like uranium and thorium that are underground, that present in the rocks that can basically split water molecules. And then deep earth degassing. It's believed that, and I don't know how they know this, but there's a large accumulation of hydrogen at the Earth's core, which can end up getting trapped by geologic strata as it rises to the surface. And earlier, when I was talking about the different companies that are doing the stimulated hydrogen production underground, number one and number two are things that can be stimulated to occur, either maybe by injecting water to rock that's already got uranium and thorium in it, or other means of generating. And that's a whole science in and of itself. So, a couple of caveats here. And oh, I see David White has got his hands up. Dave, you may have to take yourself off mute. Go ahead.
Brian, we don't need, let's see. Sorry. Can't get my video.
There.
It was mostly a reminder to me, but since you paused, I'll get it out of the way. It's not urgent in this, but I was keen on your comment about 30 cents at the well. And when you calculated that and you argued for that, what were you thinking at the pump?
Oh, well, that's a whole study in of itself. I don't have my notes in front of me that I used at this conference, but um, basically what you want to achieve, let me just digress for a little bit, is you want any natural gas user wants to get the same price per BTU as natural gas, right? So the hydrogen has got to be, once it's delivered to their site, it's got to be at the same price per BTU.
Sure. I think I can imagine your interspersing there of your line of thinking. I'm just wondering, when you said 30 cents at the well, what price were you figuring at the pump that would be a BTU equivalent of gasoline?
Okay. All right. So that is actually dependent on the vehicle. And that's why I kind of need my notes in front of me, which I haven't got. But let me go off my memory. So California Air Resources Board has published what they call an EER, the energy efficiency ratio. And basically what that is, for two equal vehicles, equal in size and weight, one running fuel cell and the other one running either gas or diesel, what is that ratio of miles per kilogram versus miles per gallon? And for a passenger car, like if you were to take a Toyota Avalon and a Toyota Mirai, that ratio is 2.5. So basically what that says is, for the driver, if hydrogen is 2.5 times the price of gasoline, they're happy. They're paying the same thing, miles or dollars per mile or whatever. Now, if it's a diesel vehicle, like a light duty, medium duty diesel vehicle, that ratio is only 1.9. And part of the reason is that diesel has more energy per gallon than gasoline does. And then it gets really bad, unfortunately, for the Class 8s. For an around town, just running around town with a Class 8 vehicle doing deliveries of, Coke or beer or whatever, that ratio is about 1.5. And so you can charge 1.5 times the price of diesel. That driver's happy. But unfortunately, over the road, it's 1.1. And this was kind of borne out by the Tesla, or I'm sorry, the Nikola vehicles that were being tested here in Colorado. And Roy had confirmed that, yeah, his trucks are getting almost parity at miles per kilogram with a miles per gallon diesel. So now to finish answering your question, what was I assuming for the cost per kilogram for a truck to deliver that hydrogen? And for that number,
you had calculated that based on a long haul heavy duty use,
well,
or
I was assuming you'd buy a hydrogen tube trailer and a cab to run it, and delivering it 50 to 100 miles. It doesn't that
okay,
difference doesn't
like
matter much.
like a
But
drayage run. Okay,
yeah, a drayage type thing, right? And
sure.
I came up with about $3.50 per kilogram, and that's include. This is a whole presentation on its own, and I actually have that
Sure.
on
I'm
YouTube.
sorry to distract
No,
you.
no, no.
I hope it
I'm
was an
happy to.
easier.
I'm happy to because it's important and we have time. But that 350 a kilogram was based on a return on investment for what you had to pay for the truck. It was the cost for the tires and oil. It was the cost for insurance. It was the cost to pay the driver, and also the compressors to compress it to put it on the truck. So that was kind of a standalone system. Now, if you were a big company and you were doing this in much greater bulk, you could probably drop that a little bit. But
I don't know.
that's where I was coming from. Now, by the way, um, if gasoline is 340 a gallon and you multiply that times 2.5, I think that's right, you get to about 875 a kilogram.
Mhm.
Now, electricity to run an electrolyzer, modular, standalone, self-contained electrolyzer tanks, compressors, dispenser, and all that. The electricity we've calculated out is about $4.25 per kilogram. Then the return on your investment, if it's a $2 million station, you're going to pay it back in about 10 years, throw in another 450. So that gets you to about that 875. So for luckily for light duty, I think an electrolyzer standalone system can compete with gasoline. But anyway, when you work that all back, you really probably got to get down to 30 cents a kilogram at the well. Now, one other thing, and that is the company Proton H2 up in Calgary that has a technique where they inject oxygen into a well, an oil well, and then they bring up hydrogen through a filter. For at least 4 or 5 years now, they've been saying 30 cents a kilogram at scale. And so that's kind of another data point. And so that's where I'm kind of driving to with a bit of a, I admit, seat of the pants kind of an analysis here.
I don't know. It sounds like a pretty complex spreadsheet to me, Brian.
Well, it is, but
No seat of the pants there, sir.
well, the seat of the pants comes in a lot of the assumptions you have to make.
Sure.
you know but
All right.
anyway, that by the way, that whole presentation is on YouTube. It's called the cost price analysis video that I did, so you can look at that. And this is all subject to change as things move around a little bit and all that, but those are the kind of numbers we've got to start getting to, because I think a lot of the hydrogen prospectors are thinking, wow, hydrogen's so expensive today. Man, if I can get to $1, I'm golden. I was trying to shoot that down.
I thank you for the depth response, and I apologize for taking you so far off your track. Please
No,
continue.
David, that's fine. It's important and we have time. So anyway. All right. Well, as long as we paused here for a little bit, anybody else have any questions? If it helps if you raise your hand, because then that'll pop up on my screen. Or just blurt something out. No, we're good. Well, interrupt anytime. Please be sure to interrupt. All right. So some of the oh, Elliot's got his hand up. There we go. Good. I knew there'd be one out there. I could feel it. Go ahead, Elliot.
I had to help you there, buddy. Well, my question is on natural hydrogen. They're still trying to figure out, and of course, what was it, the Department of Energy or USGS did that survey, that aerial, the map and all of that showed different
and we'll show that
hot spots around the country. But have you had any further word on what's going on, anything going on here in Colorado or Wyoming or anything like that?
To my knowledge, there isn't, but you know, a lot of this is kind of intellectual property, and the chances are I might not know.
Yeah.
Now, I fully intend to try to entice all of these prospectors and any other ones I can find into coming up to Colorado. And Elliot, I'm going to pause on that for now because I'm going to talk about this in a little
Okay.
bit
All
and
right.
talk
Yeah.
about the map you just referred to and some of that.
Okay.
Be-
Well,
be-
one quick addition too. I have a background from oil and gas exploration some time ago. So does my partner. He's more on the downhole side of it, and he's working really hard on some solutions there. So,
is
anyway,
that
we can
Jack?
talk like no, no, not Jack. Jack's. Hi, Jack.
Jack's on.
But no, Dr. Afsal, and
Oh,
he's
okay.
working hard on a project up in Canada right now.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll come up with some things here in the future. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to continue here because, you know, I learned some things and I think everybody's probably interested in a little bit in how some of this stuff works. So, this has been on the screen for a while here, but all three of these processes that create the hydrogen um, really rely on being trapped by some kind of geologic formations, cap rock or salt formations or whatever, because otherwise hydrogen's a tiny molecule, as we all know, and it can permeate up to the ground. And as a matter of fact, in some places, that's how they figure out where it is because they see they're called fairy circles. They're basically crops that die. Although, as it's been said, if the hydrogen's getting to the surface, you probably don't have much chance of boring into it because it's leaking out. So those fairy circles may not help you much. But anyway, that's one of the things. It relies on some kind of trapping. And then all of these processes are continuous, but the process might have stopped. You know, it may have been a slow process that was going on for a while, and then the hydrogen got trapped by a dome or something, and then you tap into it, and you think, oh, I've hit the mother lode, but maybe the process that was creating it isn't running anymore. So there's that issue. And then also the regeneration might be slow. You might tap into a big reservoir of the stuff, but it took it 10,000 or a million years or whatever to generate that much. And so that is another foible or a trap, I guess you could say, that some of the hydrogen explorers have got to watch out for. So here is the economics, and you know, I disagree with all these numbers, but probably everybody that looks at it does. But they're saying natural hydrogen 60 cents a kilogram. Okay, all right. Well, you know, maybe they're being a little conservative or or whatever on that. Some of these other numbers I don't really agree with, like electrolysis with grid electricity. Well, I think the electricity is probably, well, it depends where you are, but that's probably down, like I said, maybe $4.25. But they're totally forgetting about paying off your capex here, which is considerable, as well as some operating profit and everything else. So I don't know, take this with a grain of salt, but this was something that was thrown up at the seminar. Also, I don't know that I would say renewables, which is the green, is more than just using grid electricity, the yellow. I'm not sure what the reasoning is there, but anyway, interesting. Oh, and by the way, this was the EFI Foundation, which is one of the people that was mentioned on the tables of participants. So, hi, Tara. This was a very interesting presentation. It turns out I sat next to the Hi Tara guy just by sheer luck of the draw, and so got a chance to chat with him a little bit. But as you all know, they're doing hydrogen exploration and production. Their stock is traded over the counter. I checked my Fidelity account today, and apparently I can buy some of this if I want to. I'm kind of thinking about it just as maybe a fun thing at a dollar or 1.5 cents per share. Not sure if there's a minimum or something, but I may buy some just to play with it. I could have bought Microsoft back when it was 1.5 cents a share. I sure wish I had. But anyway, then they did a overview of this Nemaha project. And by the way, that pronunciation is kind of like Omaha. It's a good way to remember that. So Nemaha. All right, so this is actually off their website, but it was really interesting for me to hear that Hytera has an interest in this well in Nebraska that was actually sunk by Natural Hydrogen Energy LLC, which is Vyacheslav Zagonic's company. And So here's a picture of me with Vyacheslav back in June of 2021. And this well is now called the Horty well, and maybe that's the property it's on. I don't know where the name comes from, but this is the first hydrogen well in North America. And Josh Whitcomb or from Hytera mentioned that during his presentation. Now, this says it was drilled to 11,000 feet in 2023, but I was there in 2021 and there was a hole in the ground. So I don't know, maybe it wasn't all the way down. I didn't find out, and maybe it was completed in 2023. But at any rate, I just thought that was interesting because I've had a little bit of involvement with that and actually been to the site. So, oh, by the way, this they call it a wildcat well, and maybe a lot of you have heard that. Elliot will know what wildcat is, but I didn't know what a wildcat was, even though I've heard of wildcatters and wildcat wells. But that's basically an exploratory well drilled in an area with no previous production history.
That's
So
correct.
here is a map of where that is. The star is the location of the map, and I circled some things to orient you here. Here's Grand Island and Hastings, Nebraska. Here's Lincoln. This is Interstate 80 shooting along here, and it's not far off of Highway 6. And this is the same Highway 6, of course, that goes into Denver. Although you you wouldn't take Highway 6 nowadays, you'd take the interstate, of course. But at any rate, that's where that is, and well, I'll talk to something else about that location in just a minute. But here is the map that Hytera has of all of the land that they own, which is considerable. I think, yeah, 60,000 acres that is 100% owned and operated by Hytera. And that's what all these blue dots are. Now, they haven't, to my knowledge, sunk or have started to sink any wells here. But here's where the wells are. Here's the Sue de Roche. You might have heard of that well. Um, at any rate, this location, oh, to orient you here, this yellow line right here is Interstate 70. And then right about here is Manhattan, Kansas, if any of you know where that is. So that, to give you a little bit of an idea, here's the Nebraska state line up here. I don't know why this white and black is the way it is. It's, I think, kind of confusing, but that's where it is. And they went on to say that this project can be connected pretty easily to ethanol and ammonia manufacturers and petrochemical plants. And I'm going to show something on that in just a second. And apparently there's at least 10 hydrogen helium occurrences in this region, and some of them have got 92% hydrogen. And then, of course, helium's a really valuable and getting more valuable all the time industrial gas. So it's important to save both of those. Elliot, did you have another question?
Yeah, I did real quickly. It says owned, but is that just leased? Did they leased it, or they own the minerals, or they own the land, or what?
Well,
They've got to have the minerals to drill,
right.
whether
Well,
they lease it or own it.
all I can go by is here, and it says owned.
I'll check it out on their website.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
just
check it.
curious to see how they structured all of that.
Well, and you're right. The mineral rights is something else altogether. And, like who was it? One of the big billionaires said the meek will inherit the earth, but not the mineral rights.
Right. Yeah. That's a good one. That's a real good one. That's what we did a lot. We leased for clients like Anschutz and, all the Anadarko, all those that we leased lots and hundreds of thousands of acres for them. So.
Well, and Bill, that was one of the pitfalls that Bill Garner, the legal eagle, was talking about. He said, you got to be really careful of the wording because you may think like if you have gas rights or oil rights, you may think you have rights to the hydrogen too. But there's specific wording that says any gases, not just natural gas or something. So, I mean, there's just all kinds of places you can get.
Well, I think in Colorado, I think it's open. I think it's any kind of production that you produce out of there that's hydrocarbon or hydro that comes out of the ground. It's okay, but in some states they identify specific elements.
Well, right, and a lot of those contracts and things were written years ago before anybody thought about natural hydrogen. And anyway, you've just got to be really careful. All right, so here is another little chart that Hytera put out, and you see this black and white area here. That's if we compare, whoops, wrong button. If we compare, there's that white shape. Okay, there's where that white shape is here, and here's Kansas City and Wichita. And so basically, they're saying that they have off-takers or possible off-takers a whole bunch within 250 kilometers, and that's what this diameter is here. But what I thought was interesting is here's who they're considering selling this to. Ammonia plants, okay, obviously, take the hydrogen, mix it with some nitrogen out of the air, and you've got ammonia. And there's a lot of, this is farm country, right? So you've got a lot of folks using anhydrous ammonia for fertilizer. But they're also considering selling it to the oil refining business and then making ethanol out of it. And I had to do a little research on that. So here's some comments on that. So, this area in Kansas, all right, there's a good probability of hydrogen being there. I understand why they're drilling, but I didn't really think, well, there's not a big city, so are there off takers? Well, they're really thinking about the ammonia for fertilizer and the oil refineries and ethanol. And so ethanol, well, how does that work? Well, a couple of things. You can have enhanced fuel production by combining the ethanol from the biomass with hydrogen, and you can increase the output of your biofuel. And then the other is for using captured carbon, creating methanol out of that in a combined process. So this really was a little bit of a wake up call for me because that was something I hadn't really thought about using hydrogen for. So, I realized that we need big off takers initially to reap a return on investment. And my thought here in Colorado was if we could get somebody to put in a well, we'd entice a data center to come in, and we use the hydrogen into fuel cells to power the data center. You don't have to put up any transmission lines. You just do it all on the same campus. Or maybe you put a well in that's near one of the power plants and you pipe hydrogen there and they convert one of their gas turbines over to a hydrogen turbine. That was another idea, but hadn't really thought about maybe some kind of fuel production. But, well, and then of course, if you're doing that, then the small off takers can come later. You could almost, for a fuel station, you could almost just steal the hydrogen. They never miss it kind of a thing. But um, I really question, do we want to be generating hydrogen for the oil business? I'm sure a lot of environmentalists would have something to say about that. And okay, maybe we say, well, this is just a necessary step to get there. It's like a necessary evil. But it reminds me of this quote that, once we deem something as a necessary evil, it begins to look more and more necessary and less evil. So I don't know. That it makes me a little uneasy that we're using natural hydrogen to do some things with fuel. I don't know. We could debate that one, I guess. All right, so here's the map that we talked about. This is put out by the U.S. Geological Survey. I've shown this before, but just to kind of recap, there are, I believe, 12 data sets that went into compiling this, and they were all things that would enable or make underground hydrogen, more likely. And so I'm kind of excited to see this big black or big dark blue area here in Colorado. It's pretty close to Denver. So maybe we can do something with that. And by the way, this area is bluer or darker than this area they're drilling in Kansas. So are our odds better than over there? So let's talk them into coming here. Now, one of the things you notice here is that the folks in Michigan have hit pay dirt. I mean, they look like the whole state is just awash in hydrogen. So that's interesting. But interesting map because there's a lot of places that you could drill for hydrogen. I mean, even some of these others that are not as blue, maybe there's some possibility of that. But again, the state of Michigan, boy, they've hit pay dirt. So, all right. So takeaways from the conference. Well, there's a lot of companies out there looking for natural hydrogen. And it's happening in Kansas and Nebraska, as we talked about, but also Iowa, Minnesota, which, let me back up, that I really scratch my head about. They must be down, they said it's what is it, the Iron Ridge area or something like that. So they must be down here. Here's Minneapolis, I think. Yeah, down here. So maybe it's this part of the state because it looks pretty dry up here. But at any rate, there's a company that's prospecting in Minnesota. Idaho, that's Coloma. That was just in the news. And then Africa and Spain and Australia. So this is something that we didn't even know about, 7 years ago or so. And it's just taken off like I don't want to say wildfire. I need a better analogy. Anyway, it's taken off. So the other thing is, everybody who's looking for hydrogen seems to be finding it. I haven't heard of a dry well, but we don't know about the quantity and the flow rate. That's really to be determined yet. And another thing, kind of switching gears here, is the folks at this event have asked me to help plan next year's event. And that's going to be May 13th to 14th. So it's not quite a year away, but it's going to be in Houston again. And it turns out I've got a buddy in Houston, so I can kind of rationalize spending some money to go down there for that. But the ideas that I want to bring up for next year is more involvement by companies that are converting old oil wells to clean hydrogen. Now, that was discussed at this conference, but it was kind of incidental and just mentioned a couple of times. There was one presentation talked a little about it, but I'd like to see more focus on that, especially since Gold Hydrogen is in Houston. And I talked to them; they weren't able to come to this conference. The lady who would have been there is actually lives up in Minneapolis and couldn't make it, and their other folks there in Houston weren't available for that. But and then talk our friends at Proton, who I've been talking to for golly 5 years, into coming down for this. Would also like to see some focus on separating hydrogen and helium. Now, almost all of these wells that have hydrogen also have helium, and they're both really valuable gases. But as it turns out, it's a little bit tricky to separate the two. Um, in the past, what they've done, if they're looking for helium, they basically just discard the hydrogen. Uh, and I asked, there was a company, I think it was a French company, I don't remember if it was Air Liquide or who, at the conference here in April. I said, are you not keeping both gases? And they said, no. And I said, are there good ways to do that? And they didn't think there were. Um, I know one way you could do it would be like using uh, Hyatt, using their solid state compressor, which works, it looks like a fuel cell. It only lets hydrogen through it, and it's going to reject all the other gases. So then you'd have helium and everything else, and probably easier to separate the helium out of that. But sorry, I'm going on, but I'd like to see something at talking about that at the next conference. Also, nobody really talked about pipelines. Um, the best concept I've seen is either a coaxial or triaxial, where the inner pipe has the hydrogen. You have a pipe surrounding that that's got an inert gas that collects anything that either leaks or seeps through the pipe, and then you either flare it or recycle it. Maybe it's a small amount, so it's probably not worth recycling. But anyway, I think it'd be interesting to have something like that at the next conference. And also, we didn't have USGS there, so it might be nice to see if we can get uh, Jeff Elliott or Jeff Ellis, I'm sorry, to be there at one of these. So, all right, let me pause for a second. Any comments or questions? We got plenty of time. All right. Well, hopefully I'm not boring you all. Oh, David White's got his hand up again. Go ahead, David.
All right, back to me. Sorry, back to me again. Got to be faster with these video controls, don't I? You had mentioned that in some of the most productive wells, it's coming up at 95% hydrogen, maybe 3% helium, other, I don't know what it is, sulfurs. My question is, does anybody talk about the cost of getting that to 5 nines hydrogen for fuel cell capacity?
Well, that is a really good question. Now, I know that if you liquefy hydrogen, you pretty much get rid of everything else that's in there. And I need to maybe even have a podcast with somebody that's doing hydrogen liquefaction to find out how practical or efficient or whatever it is to do liquefaction. Because a lot of times you may need to liquefy it just to transport it. So purifying
Sure,
it,
but you've got to do what, like 30 tons a day in order to make the liquefaction somewhat cost effective?
well, there's all that. And it is definitely, based on the analysis I've done, it's definitely cheaper to move it by gaseous means than by liquid. I don't care how much volume you're. Now, what happens is if you've got, like, say, Elliot's got a fuel station and he's fueling 50 trucks a day, 50 18-wheelers a day that are taking, I don't know, say 100 kilograms each. You're going to have a continuous stream of gaseous hydrogen coming in there to fill it. So you may be forced to go to liquefaction just to cut down on the trips of the trucks, the number of trucks you've got. So that's one thing. Or I don't know, even if I haven't done the analysis, if you're shipping it like 1,000 miles, if there's a break even point between gaseous and liquid. But maybe if you're going to have to liquefy it to filter it or clean it up or whatever you want to say, maybe then you just ship it at that point. Now, there is the company Verne, Verne, is doing uh, cryogenic compressed hydrogen. And at first I thought, well, wait a minute, liquid hydrogen's a liquid. You can't compress a liquid. Well, turns out you can compress liquid
Oh,
hydrogen by
oh,
like 30%.
hmm.
But the other benefit, if you think about it, we live here at Mile High at least, and we are all familiar with the fact that the boiling point is lower here. And so you go down to sea level, the boiling point is higher. Well, the same thing applies to hydrogen too. If you compress it like 300 bar, now the boiling point is quite a bit higher, so you don't have to keep it quite as cold. So there's all kinds of nuances to this stuff, and a lot of times the answer does kind of depend. Like Chris Allo was saying, well, what size fuel station do you want? It kind of depends. They've got a variety, and that's the same thing here. It depends on how far you're going and maybe some of the other considerations, like if you're trying to filter the hydrogen, maybe liquefying it makes sense.
The reason why this comes up for me is are these early users or maybe this early larger market that the geologic folks can tap into ammonia or refinery, though we may have some disdain for that. The purity of hydrogen that those uses can take is a lot lower than the purity of hydrogen
Right,
required for fuel cell applications.
right.
So if you're pulling it out of the ground at 30 cents a kilogram, you're delivering it to those users at a much
Mhm.
lower cost, at a much lower, I don't want to say lower, higher, lower purity
Right.
than it would take to get it to a 5.9s for a fuel cell application.
Well, absolutely. And we're trying to build not only a business here, we're trying to build an entire market. And
Mm.
so we want to pick the low-hanging fruit first and go after the most cost-effective things. And if we can sell dirty hydrogen for making ammonia, great. And yeah, maybe it's even
Well,
okay.
let's not say dirty. Come on, come on. It's
Well,
pretty
I
good.
mean, it's got impurities in it.
Well, dirty would apply with dirty in our general thinking, I think, is an acronym for carbon emitting. So
Okay,
it's
yeah.
not that.
No, no,
So at
no.
least it's not
It's
that,
not
right?
that at all. But I mean,
Right.
we're pulling something out of the ground, and it's going to have sulfur. It's going to have maybe some
Yeah.
methane in it. It's going to have
Yeah.
water vapor, everything else, and absolutely the fertilizer. I think. I guess we'd have to talk to the folks who make the equipment to turn it from hydrogen and nitrogen into ammonia. I think they can handle probably a certain amount of contaminants. Let's put it that way.
A lot more than say fuel cells can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and by the same token, I mean, if you want to run an internal combustion engine on hydrogen, you can take a lot of contaminants. And,
Sure.
I asked that question. I had Jim Nebergall from Cummins on one of the podcasts. And I asked him, I said, is anybody thinking about having like a internal combustion grade of hydrogen and a fuel cell grade? And the answer from him and some other people was, well, now we got to have all these supply chains for all this different stuff. Probably not. But I think the jury's still out on that one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've still got you. There must be other technologies other than liquefaction to purify hydrogen, because not every hydrogen that's sold at California fuel cell stations at 5.9s is going through a liquid transfer.
Well, there's pressure swing absorption.
Sure.
I think you
Okay.
can use that with hydrogen. And then there's the company I mentioned earlier, Hyatt, Hyet. They're out of the Netherlands, and they make a compressor it's a solid state compressor for compressing hydrogen. And it looks just like a fuel cell
Yeah,
or,
you did mention them.
yeah, okay. They also make a filter, which is using basically the same technology. So only hydrogen, so that's 5.9s or better going through that membrane, just like with a fuel cell
Okay.
or electrolyzer, I should say. But I don't know how practical that is.
Mm.
Those are typically, kilograms per day units, not tons per day. Okay, you run a bunch in parallel, but I don't know how expensive these things are. Maybe if you're making them in a gazillion at a time, like a cookie cutter it's practical. I don't know, but
This may be new. I don't know. I don't know the purity that comes out of. I mean, obviously, if it's an electrolytic hydrogen process, it's probably 100%. I don't know the purity that comes out of the SMR or the ATR process. Does that have to be? And that's just a rhetorical question. Does that have to be cleaned up in order to be fuel cell grade? Something to look at.
I don't know the answer to that. And I think
Yeah,
in a lot of
nor do
cases
I.
they liquefy it. So maybe that's where they get the purity. I don't know. But I was thinking about this earlier today. I need to get talk to somebody or get them on the podcast or even on the meetings here to tell us, okay, does the simple act of liquefying hydrogen clean it up? Like to know that. I don't know if anybody is there anybody on the line here that maybe knows that?
And from my experience, yes, it does.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Walter. I knew there should be somebody on here. I'm talking to myself, and I should be talking to the audience. It's hard when you're sitting in your bedroom on a computer. But Elliot, you got your hand up again. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have on our website a BNGH2 website video from Chart Industries that takes liquid, and it either can go to liquid for LH2 running like for an ice truck, or gaseous, and it's compressed at the pump. So, and there's a video that shows how that works. So if you guys want to check that out.
Yeah, good. It's
Yeah.
bngh2.com, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
All right.
Brian, there is one caveat though. I don't remember what the freezing point or the boiling point of helium is, and so it's all based on the temperature. You know, since helium or hydrogen boils at the lowest point, that's all that's left. And so you have all the stages. If you have oxygen and everything else, you can always tap those off. I don't remember where helium sits on that scale.
Helium's real close, and so I don't know if that's an issue, like trying to control that. I just don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how a fuel cell would react with helium. I know that Hyatt was trying to get it to be compatible with CO2, but they're definitely not compatible with SH2 or SHO, hydrogen sulfide,
Yep.
HOS.
Yeah, so you might have to remove that before you even go into their unit. So yeah, things like that are little gotchas in the details that really have to be looked at. Okay, thanks, Walter. Appreciate that. All right, well, this was something I learned new. I had never heard of orthohydrogen and parahydrogen. And what these are is ortho, both the electrons are spinning the same way around the proton. And with para, they're spinning opposite directions. So it turns out that's important. Now, ordinary gaseous hydrogen, room temperature, turns out to be about 75% ortho and about 25% para. Excuse me a second here. And at cryogenic temperatures, this equilibrium shifts toward para. And at liquid hydrogen near absolute zero, it's almost 100% para. So these, as it turns out, these isomers, as they're called, have different physical properties. And those are the specific heat, the enthalpy, the entropy, and the thermal conductivity. And I'm rubbish at thermodynamics, so I'm not going to try to remember what enthalpy is, but this is actually important for storing and handling liquid hydrogen. Now, also, as it turns out, that when you convert or when you liquefy or hydrogen, the conversion to parahydrogen releases heat. And so good old hydrogen, it just has so many things going against it. So you're trying to cool it and compress it and liquefy it. And it's kind of fighting you by giving off some heat in the process. It's kind of like when we fill a hydrogen tank on a vehicle. It's expanding, but it gets hot. And so, or yes. And so we have that going against us as well. That's the what is it? The Joule-Thomson effect. And anyway, so I had just never heard of this before. I just wanted to bring this up. It's probably down in the details a lot of us don't necessarily need, but it's just good to know that there are these two different types of hydrogen. So you can impress people at cocktail parties, as they say. All right. So that's all really I have for this part of this presentation. We've had a lot of questions. I really appreciate the questions, by the way. I mean, it's if we were meeting face to face, I think we'd probably have more of the chance for discussion. So I welcome everybody to butt in or raise your hand or whatever. And maybe having said that, are there any other questions of anything that we've covered today that anybody wants to jump back to or comments?
Yeah, back to the cryocompressed hydrogen. It's basically more the vessel than the process
Mhm.
that allows that to happen. You require a special vessel to be able to store hydrogen at a cold temperature at high pressure, because most of the liquid hydrogen tanks are in the 2 to 5 bar range.
Yeah.
But there are some cryogenic compressed vessels being created now that can go up to the equivalent of 700 bar. And the reason you have boil off is that the vessel, if it starts to boil off and you're only at 3 bar,
Mhm.
then any gas that's above 3 bar has to be exhausted, correct? And so if you have a vessel that can handle a higher pressure, say 350 or 700 bar, you don't have to allow the gas to exhaust until it's a much higher pressure. And
Right.
going from liquid to gas, it does expand a significant amount. I can't remember the exact number, but it's in the factor of the hundreds
Right.
level. And so if you can get the container to be able to handle the low temperature and the high pressure, then you've solved the compressed cryogenic equation. With the standard liquid pump that can go up to 900 bar, all you need is a vessel that you can put it in, and it'll automatically turn to virtually compressed liquid or compressed gas, depending on what the final temperature ends up being inside the container. And
Yeah.
depending on how big the container is, will determine how cold the container stays. And then if you use helium refrigerant on a stationary container, then you can keep the container at low temperatures so it doesn't have that pressure buildup, because it's not putting off the heat and increasing in pressure.
Yeah, thanks, Walter, for pointing that out. And you're absolutely right. A standard liquefied hydrogen tank is not designed really for much pressure at all. And you're right, these tanks are 350 to 700 bar, possibly even higher. You know, I have no idea, but I wonder what the boiling point of hydrogen is at room temperature, or the pressure, I should say. It might be hundreds of thousands of psi. Who knows?
But it all depends on how many molecules you want to put in a specific space, right?
Well, I'm just thinking what would the pressure be of a tank that was room temperature but liquid hydrogen? It's probably astronomical. But anyway, the podcast, I always cover this. I've got another one I'm recording this week that's going to talk about workforce development and so forth. The previous one has been out there a few weeks, the one with Amagi. Oh, Bill Leedy's got his hand up. Go ahead, Bill.
Brian, can you hear me?
Yep.
I put some names in the chat of the people I perceive as the leading national labs folks on the high blend project, inquiring what's the safe limit for hydrogen blended with natural gas and steel, extant steel
Okay.
pipelines. Can we use the extant natural gas pipeline network for moving hydrogen? So those might be good folks to tap, one or more of them, for your next meeting, if that's coming up. GTI Energy had a 30-minute webinar today with some of their experts talking about the infrastructure necessary to move hydrogen and CO2 for some reason around. But it was a bit disappointing. I entered some questions in their chat and nobody seemed to know what I was talking about. So there is still opportunity to find out what's going on with this high blend project that's $50 million worth of effort at 3 or 4 major national labs and some efforts by some of the others as well. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Bill. That's really interesting. I'm going to take a look at that. I'm trying to write here. There we go. And look into that. Maybe that is somebody for a podcast or having on the meeting. Be great.
Or try the GTI Energy people. They're generally pretty competent, a pretty big team there. Maybe one of their folks could help you out or would be a good podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, Bill. All right, we're on the home stretch here. Like I say, I like to point out the podcast and what's going on there, and then just remind everybody that if the goodness of your heart you feel like throwing some money toward CHN, that'll help with some of the things that we do, like trying to gear up. Maybe we'll do a hydrogen day again next year. We're not going to do it this year. There's just not enough good stuff to talk about, and I don't want it to be a mediocre event. But just asking if you are an individual, throw us, $50 a year, and it is tax deductible. You can do this through the website. And then for startups, 200 a year. And then, if you're a company and you'd like to also have a membership in, this was Colorado Clean Tech Industries Association. They changed their name to just Colorado Clean Tech. But at any rate, that membership is not tax deductible, but it does include the membership in CCIA as well as CHN. Again, here on the website, just go to the join page to find that. But that being said, I never want to discourage anybody from participating without paying. You don't have to pay. It's open to everybody. This is a nonprofit. We're here for the public good, as they say, and so do not feel obligated. But if you want to try to help, that's great. Here's what the page looks like, individual and corporate. Actually, I added another button. I need to update this page. The startup button is now a separate button now. And that is it. So we got a couple minutes left. And if there's any last questions, please feel free. Oh, Bill, you got your hand up again. Go ahead.
Brian and friends, I'll be at this September 30, October 1 conference in Seattle called Green Hydrogen North America Summit or something like that, where I'll be the facilitator for a panel on water use with hydrogen. If any of you folks want to give me your insights on what you think is the rank of the water problem and the many difficulties in trying to build a hydrogen economy or sector thereof, I'd be glad to hear that. Maybe we can include it in the panel. And I'm also giving a solo slide report on our small company's proposal to Pacific Northwest Hydrogen Hub for a $1 billion multi-marine fuels plant to be built somewhere in the Seattle area, probably at Cherry Point, north of Seattle, energized entirely on deep hot dry rock geothermal. The crust is not particularly good in that area. It's something that couldn't be done soon, but in the future, probably we could have a large capacity marine fuels operation there, perhaps fueling the cruise ships bound for Alaska. Thank you.
Okay, great. Bill, while you were talking, I was just taking a second here. I want to show you a chart, and you may not want to use the data like this, but showing how much water. Oh, doggone it. Where's the slide?
We know we need 9 kilograms of water per kilogram of hydrogen produced. And
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. You got to make it understandable to people. Do you see my screen? And so, and also you need, it's a relative amount. That's like, when you go to buy something or you look at an advertisement, they say, well, people would normally expect to pay $1,000, but we're offering it today for $9.99. So you sort of give people a range, a reference. And so what I thought to do was to look at what amount of water an average restaurant takes versus an average hydrogen station. Okay, so how big a restaurant, how big a fuel station, whatever. But this is kind of average. So this is 76 cars a day. Not too bad. 967 gallons. Well, the average restaurant takes 5,800 gallons. So I think when you frame it this way, it helps people see that, okay, I can relate. Because otherwise, 9 kilograms of water or whatever, in liters, whatever, they can't relate to that. And then you want to talk about, what about gasoline? Well, that takes 3 times the amount of water making hydrogen. So, it's kind of like shut up and sit down. It's not a big deal, but by framing it this way, it helps. So anyway, if that helps you to kind of frame the message to people rather than just throwing a number at them that they can't relate to, that's the thought.
Yes, please send me that slide, Brian. Nice work.
Yeah, you bet. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see. Let me get back. Where's my Zoom? Um, any other questions, comments, whatever? We've got just 5 minutes, but we don't have to use it. Everybody's happy. We're down to only 14 folks. We were up to almost 30, so I think we've uh, maybe bored a few people. But thank you everybody for attending, and we'll look forward to getting together with you at the regular time next week or next month.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Jane, and keep up the good work. By the way, you and Chris.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
It was a very interesting presentation.
Well, I hope it always is. I try. All right. Well, all right, everybody. We're going to adjourn right now. Thank you all.